In this section, we're going to talk through the 12 zodiac signs. It's probably pretty likely that you resonate with one of them, at least probably your sun sign. You're pretty familiar with it, pretty resonate with it. And then if you've gone a little bit deeper, maybe you know a little bit about your moon sign energy or your rising sign energy, and maybe one more because there's someone impactful in your life, spouse, significant other, or parent, whose energy you may readily associate with or identify them as one of the major signs. So it's likely of all the areas we're kind of going through, people probably have some of the most experience with the zodiac signs, but I want to use this to kind of reinforce the translation model, I guess as I call it, between the zodiac signs to the planets to the houses, to kind of reinforce that. So hopefully that kind of gets ingrained. So if you get stuck with anything, you can translate it to a house or a planet or zodiac sign that you're more familiar with as you get into kind of working through your charts and readings. So, what first thing, just like as we talk through the houses, the zodiac goes through in order, starting with the first day of spring is the first day of the year, and that goes through all the signs through that as well. So it's really attached to the seasons. We'll kind of go through that as we see it. So the first sign for this is Aries, which starts on the first day of spring, around March 20th, 21st, depending on the year. But I want to really reiterate that, Aries is really also Mars energy, which is also really first house energy. So that's a lot of, action energy. That's a lot of, kind of your personality or figuring out who you are energy. That's why the key phrase for Aries is I am. It's a very trying to, if you talk about like Disney, not necessarily the Disney movies, they always talk about all the good characters that we know, that the first song they sing is usually I want. That tells you about really what their goal is in life and what they want out of life, and then we kind of root for them to attain that goal. Little Mermaid, I want to be where the people are and be up and walking, so forth. And then they always say, like, when the bad guys or the obstacles get in the way, they always sing and I am this, I'm the king, I'm the barrier, I'm the bad guy, whatever it might be. And so Aries kind of projects some of that energy of like, the almost self-centered kind of energy. That's why, since it's the first sign of spring, so the first zodiac sign for the season, that's why it's cardinal energy. Cardinal, again, is like the initiators, the beginners, the idea people. And then Aries is associated with fire, which, if you've taken my tarot course, also goes through, kind of resonates with your spirit, or what, I view it as like what gets you up in the morning, gets you going. The keywords for Aries are, they're active, they're ambitious, they're leaders. They can be self-centered, but that's not always in the worst possible way as we always think about it. Obviously, it can be if they, forget about others, but it's just that's the energy of the first house, which is trying to figure out who you are and how you separate yourselves from everyone else on this journey. And they can also be very aggressive because they obviously have an object or something they want to go after. And hopefully they don't want people to get in their way so they can attain their goals. The second sign here, so this is Taurus, which translated, this is also Venus energy, and this is second house energy. So as the second sign of the zodiac for the season of spring, that's where you get the fixed energy. We're starting to take, actually taking action on things. And Taurus is associated with earth energy. The key phrase for Taurus is I have, because they do get into that, think about that Venus second house energy kind of gets into, possessions and things that you have that help, what you want to collect and gather, all that materialistic type things. That's why some of the keywords around Taurus are either affectionate, passionate, practical. They can be stubborn, and materialistic. So, some of the practical and stubborn comes from some of that earth energy. Materialistic, really, that kind of, to me, reminds me of this Venus kind of second house energy. So that's kind of the energy you get from Taurus. The next one that we have, so this is Gemini. So this is the third sign of the season of spring, where I want you to really think about Gemini is also Mercury, which is also the third house, which is also air. The third house being like your early education and really what you want to, almost interaction with siblings can be here. Early just to be able to communicate your feelings are here. That's why it's considered mutable energy, because it's like finishing, completing things, getting things done. Gemini is an air sign. The key phrase for Gemini is I think, since it obviously is related to Mercury, so a lot of reflection and thinking. Some of the keywords around Gemini is obviously intellect, because I always spend a lot of time thinking. logical, rational. You can get a little bit of narcissistic, vain, but very communicative. I always kind of think of as an air sign as well. They can kind of be like lost in their heads or kind of stuck in their heads as well too. That's kind of a when people talk about like airheads or air personalities. I think that's kind of been over exaggerated, but obviously I can kind of see it in some people in my life. It's if you're really intellectual or your phrase is really thinking, and then you're really going to be spending a lot of time in your head. So if you really believe in like the chakras and that kind of stuff, there's really a lot of your head kind of energy. So that's going to be almost distracting you from what's going on everywhere else outside the world. So that's something that I think all air signs have to kind of think about, or even Geminis. They're kind of really thinking or stuck in their heads, kind of getting lost in that kind of energy. The fourth sign here, so this is Cancer. So now we've gone through the first season, so that is wraps up spring. So now Cancer is the first zodiac sign of the summer. So it's again we start over with cardinal energy because we're starting over another season. So again, it's kind of like activation kind of energy, idea kind of energy, but this time through water. So that's why I want you to associate Cancer with the moon, with also fourth house, which is kind of like related to your home. And obviously the home can be the people that's in it, can be interactions with your parents, stuff like that, related to that kind of energy as well. So if you get stuck with exactly what is Cancer energy, Cancer can be the moon, which is why it can be very emotional, and that's why the key phrase for Cancer is I feel. And then the fourth house can obviously be related to your home. So look through some of the key words. It's emotional, sensitive, loyal, imaginative, generous, and moody can be with those like emotional swings where if you're again not an A word. I always, some people say, oh, is that a negative sign? Is that a positive sign? Oh, I don't want to be associated with the moody sign. But it's really, if you think about taking all these things to their logical extremes, if your key phrase is I feel, again, this kind of means that if you're thinking about the different chakras, it's like you're so in touch with your feelings and your emotions. And obviously, if your emotions, you're feeling very deep emotions, that can take you away, again, from, call it reality or the practicality or the groundedness that some of the earth signs will have. And that's why you can come across to others who don't fully understand how swept away you are by your emotions, how engulfed you are. They can come across as moody because your mood is naturally going to swing with your emotions, just like the tides, since this is attached to the moon and the moon is associated with the tides. And that's where that kind of comes from. And in the same way, I think if people say, I don't want to be related to the one a sign that can be considered very sensitive, but it's also the positive side of relation with that, which is like, since you feel so much, that's why you get this almost intuition from it, because it's not just you're an overly sensitive person, quote unquote, in that sense, but also you're sensitive to the emotions in the room. So you can walk into a room and kind of gauge the situation, what's going on, because you're a sensitive person, so you're feeling out. So you're feeling out the energy in the room. Is this a very tense room? Is there did you interrupt? Are you the third wheel that just interrupted some, emotional sparks or something like that going on between people? Being fully connected with your moon energy, your Cancer energy, this cardinal water energy, and just being on the plane of feeling, that's going to really help you out in those types of situations. And being in touch with that is very, very powerful as well. And that's why I think once you feel so much and you can kind of feel this subconscious connection to other people, that's why generous obviously makes perfect sense for Cancer, because these are, if they feel the pains or the passions or the needs of other people, they're naturally going to want to be more generous and share. And that's why sometimes we talk about like second house energy, which is like how you feel about money and possessions and so forth. So sometimes moon in the second house could be, you need to feel secure with some money, but also some of that generosity may make you want to feel like, well, I want to have some money so that I can actually give. I want to have a lot of money, make me feel secure, so that I can feel good about giving some of away to other people and help people out as well. Now you have Leo, which is the second zodiac sign of summer. So I really want you to associate, Leo with the sun and with the fifth house. That's why, being the second sign of summer, it's got more fixed energy as far as, putting things to work and getting things going, but does it with a lot of fire energy as well. And the key word, kind of key phrase for Leo is I will. And I think the keywords, some of the best keywords I think for Leo is obviously a noble, prideful, extravagant, potentially egotistical, creative, very powerful. I think when you think about the sun itself, and then the sun specifically being, also, kind of about where you want to shine and how you want to be seen by other people. If you go back to that kind of lecture, that's where this prideful energy kind of comes from, and also noble. So they probably want to present themselves as very well and kind of put on, that mask or that persona of how they want to be. So that's complete, total Leo energy as well too. Extravagant could be obviously, just in certain areas, but depending on which house this is, you might be more extravagant in that area, whether that's your ninth house and like your formal education, that might be like extravagant in traveling or stuff like that. If it's in your kind of your fourth house or home, it might be extravagant in some of your home life, or how you want your home to be. And then if it's in your second house, it could be a little bit more extravagant in either you're materialistic, you may be a little more like the best of materialistic technology things, or even you may be a little bit more extravagant in your spending for various items that are various important to you, whatever they may be. So the next one is Virgo. So this is the third and last zodiac sign of the summer. So that you get this mutable kind of completion energy. Virgo does it through earth energy. Virgo is also associated with Mercury and then the sixth house. So I want you to kind of associate those as well too. The best phrase for Virgo is almost like I analyze. And so that's, again, kind of goes to this like Mercury type energy as well too. But it's some of the key words for Virgo are modest, reserved, analytical, picky, naggy, a little bit melancholy. I think some of the best ones for Virgo, I think you do get some analytical, picky, nagging. It's so the key phrase again is like I analyze. That's someone who is going to be kind of assessing situations and looking at things and trying to figure things out. And that's what kind of gets into like that Mercury kind of thinking, processing type of angle. And that's where you can kind of come off as reserved, because they might not be overbearing or almost like need to be heard like some of the other fire signs where they need to be the center of attention. This is someone maybe who might be a little bit more reserved, a little more modest, kind of sit back, but they're analyzing what's going on in the room, and they're kind of almost making their own assessments and judging about the situation that's at hand as well. And the next one is Libra. So now Libra is the cardinal energy of the fall. Since it's the first zodiac sign for the season of fall, it goes back to the cardinal energy again. This time it's the cardinal energy for air. And so I want you to associate also kind of Libra with Venus and with the seventh house, which totally makes sense when you kind of get into this, where Venus is all about kind of relationships or relating to people. Seventh house is all about relationships as well too. That's why those two go together well. And kind of the main phrase here is I balance, which is classic Libra type energy. That can be balancing, the seventh house energy is like, how do I balance my needs and my partnership's needs, or my partners or people that I work with, kind of with my own needs? How do you kind of bring those two things together? And that's why some of the key words are, artistic, diplomatic. They can balance things out for people. A lot more polished, charming. It can be indecisive if you're balancing or weighing. This might be someone in your life who may make a pros and cons list before making any decision, and then they make this huge, super long pros and cons list. No matter how it turns out, then it doesn't help them out. They're still a little bit indecisive in it, but at the same time, they can be a little bit more judgmental because they're kind of also doing this kind of pros and cons list where they're kind of looking and nitpicking or kind of judging people. That's kind of when you get to like the scales. Obviously the scales of justice, and kind of thinking like, okay, being the judge or judgmental thing, that kind of gets into some other energies from the tarot as well too. And then they can also be very outgoing people as well too, with that kind of cardinal air energy. They can also be very artistic as well. Now the next one is Scorpio. So Scorpio is the second zodiac sign of the fall. So this goes back to some fixed energy as far as putting things into action. And this is through water. I am actually a Scorpio as well, so I totally resonate with this energy. I want you to really think about Scorpio as also Pluto, as also the eighth house. The main phrase for it is "I desire," and so that's why it makes perfect sense when you think about something like this eighth house kind of energy. So if the second house is like, kind of what do you want, and then the eighth house is more like I desire, kind of figuring out what do we want, what do we want, desire. It's almost how do you in relationships, what do you want out of a relationship? That kind of gets into this. That's almost like the sexual kind of energy. Kind of, you can be almost possessive about people in relationships and get into that stuff. But that's why I think imaginative is great for that. Passionate, very emotional, kind of goes to the water energy. Subtle, they can be very intense because water energies kind of feel deeply. Kind of gets in this kind of sexual energy. They can be a little bit secretive. They can be a little bit possessive, obstinate, and I think dramatic is a great word as well. I think that some people may associate with that, but obviously that goes to Pluto. So if Pluto is all about transformation and almost like the death card in tarot, just basically burning it all down to start over again, you can see that in a relationship where someone would be like, okay, a very dramatic move would be, okay, I'm going to burn all this down. This might be the type of person who would, throw all your clothes out outside the house or the apartment in a relationship to make a big dramatic statement that they're very unhappy with you. That's almost a sign of like key transformation. Is like, I'm burning this all. I'm so upset about this. And dramatic message, because they are so emotional, they are so passionate about this, and whatever hurt they have from the relationship, they're willing to burn it all down with this dramatic step to then hopefully make the transformation that they're hoping to. So I think by seeing that, you can figure out how looking at some of these, like the Pluto energy, may help you in that transformation, may help you understand Scorpios a bit more as to why they're doing these things. And it's not just like, oh yeah, there goes Scorpio again being overly dramatic, drama. That's not necessarily, that's true, but it's not necessarily, you can try to understand the motivations for why this is and how this happens to be for these individuals. Next one is Sagittarius. So Sagittarius, this is the third zodiac sign of the fall. This will take us to the winter solstice. So Sagittarius is Jupiter, which is the ninth house. So Jupiter is all about, expansion. And the ninth house is all about like kind of expanding your horizons, kind of, I would say, trying to figure out your like formal education or traveling or experiencing different cultures to kind of grow beyond your horizons. That's where you bring back the mutable energy, the finishing, getting things done, but this time through fire. The key phrase for Sagittarius is I see. Some of the good keywords are they're ambitious, independent, optimistic, blunt, I think is a great word for them as well too. Expansive, expansive goes to Jupiter, of course. Pushy, careless, and philosophical. Philosophical, I think, goes really great with the ninth house kind of energy as well too. I like to call Sagittarius the frustrated dreamers, because if you look at the sign of Sagittarius, they kind of have a feet on the ground, but they're pointing that arrow towards the heavens, so they kind of have some kind of grounded energy, but almost this desire to do something different, which maybe like lots of travel or something. Obviously, the ninth house energy, they maybe have this urge to constantly be traveling or something like that, or growing their horizons. That's this Jupiter kind of energy that's coming to them, which may frustrate them if they, can't travel or can't, be expansive or find ways to do new things in their life, or broaden their horizons. They may get, they may not be the ones who like routines as much. And they may get, kind of want to break free from the routine so they can bring in more expansive new things into their life. That's when they may come across as a little bit more independent than some of the other signs. Next one is Capricorn. So Capricorn is the first zodiac sign of winter, so it's the cardinal energy again, since when the Capricorn starts, that's the winter solstice and the first day of winter, and this time it's through earth energy. So each of the earth, air, water, and fire get a cardinal sign as the beginning of the seasons, and their key phrase is I use. So I want you to think about Capricorn through the lens of Saturn and through the lens of like the 10th house. And so Capricorn, some of the key words from them is they're a little bit more reserved, a little more prudent, a little bit more practical, a little bit kind of perfectionist, a little more domineering, a little secure and patient. And I think that kind of gets into the idea of, to me, this kind of the Capricorn's job is just very earth. That's where the very practical kind of get that earth energy, that Capricorn energy. I think a lot, some of that Saturn energy comes in with, almost being, well, not reserved. I call these like the rule followers. These are the people who would follow the rules, follow kind of more norms and conventions of society, of the, acting the way they think people should act and doing things the way that people should do. That's a lot of Saturn energy as well. So that's kind of a perfect kind of explanation of like Capricorn energy. These are probably the most practical people in my mind of the entire zodiac, because that Earth energy comes through, cardinal Earth energy, and this real kind of almost Saturn kind of, not restrictions, but they're going to be the least eccentric people that you may know from the entire zodiac. They're more, but they're completely more, maybe more reliable. They're more prudent. They might be, in the end, I think the domineering comes through because, they may say, well, this is the right way to do things. This is the way you should behave. So why isn't everybody doing this? I can see this, and all those kind of things. So the key phrases that I use kind of gets into how do you use these conventions or norms or skills to move forward in life within the constraints of the box. That's why I think I like to view as Saturn wants you to be in a box. Capricorn, that kind of Earth energy, is someone who is less likely to be outside the box in their thinking. So that's why the two kind of go together in my mind as well. And then you get to almost the exact opposite immediately. So then you get to Aquarius. So this is the second zodiac sign of winter. So you get more fixed energy, and then you get this air energy that Aquarius comes through. Aquarius is related to Uranus, which is related to the 11th house. The main phrase for Aquarius is "I know." These people are just, I think that Uranus energy, which is like breaking free from the molds or completely thinking outside the box, is perfect for them. So these two pairs next to each other is very interesting and almost humorous in the tarot, because you have, and also the fact that the planets are next to each other. So you go to Saturn, then Uranus, as you go to, from the sun to Pluto and the planets, and then do that in the zodiac as well too. So it's almost like Capricorn kind of creates all the restrictions and all the rules, and then loves to operate within that box. And then that's very Saturn kind of, your Saturn energy. Then Uranus kind of comes up after that, which is just wants to break out of that, be unique, the rule breaker and so forth. That's why they're assertive, very progressive in the things they want to do, very inventive, because obviously if you're thinking outside the box or thinking of doing things, I think unconventional is one of the best words for the Aquarius energy. And then they can be very friendly people, very opinionated, they can be impatient. And I think, at least you see all the memes online, some people think of Aquarius as very almost detached. I think that's some of that air energy as well, is that they're kind of, they can not lost in their heads as much, but they just, I don't want to say it as like they don't need you, but it's almost as like they're a little bit more detached from the needing to be attached. They're less needy than other signs, I guess is the best way to say it. Some people say, it's almost like, if you were this square, that's why I think that's not a good match for some of the signs. But if you're saying, okay, a Scorpio, or any water sign where you feel super deeply and you have a breakup and you're just heartbroken over it and you can't get over it and you're lamenting on it for a while, well, that's Aquarius is probably going to do that. And you may come across as being detached because they're just like, okay, well, I'm more progressive, I'm more unconventional, I'll just kind of move on and kind of do my own thing. But that may come across as being a little bit more detached and not, quote unquote, needing you as much as you need them. And then the last zodiac sign, so this is Pisces. So I want you to associate Pisces with Neptune energy, with the 12th house in the houses. It's the third sign of winter, so before we get back to spring with Aries and kind of do it over again. That's why it's mutable energy, which is like completions, endings, fixing things up, only this time through water. And I think one of the best phrases for Pisces is "I believe." Pisces, some good keywords for Pisces are they're receptive, intuitive, romantic, mystical, imaginative, psychic. That can lead you towards, depression, impractical, and lazy. I think all those kind of go to, like, if you are really viewing Pisces through this Neptune wants to get into the intuitive, mystical, psychic type things, trying to really solve things. Like, what do you believe? Like, you now have in the houses and in the zodiac, you've gone through all the signs of the zodiac, And the houses, you've gone through all the houses before, you know, whatever you believe in at the end of life. And so you should have some theories on all these things. Like, what do you believe after going through this journey? What did you figure out and what do you believe? And I think Pisces spend a lot of time thinking about these types of things. And that's a lot of some of the 12th house energy that I love from astrology that I like to bring into the tarot with me as well. If you've taken, you know, my tarot course, but you should have some kind of, you know, theories around things. That's why you can almost see this attachment to like core beliefs. That's why I think there are, you know, there's some romantic view. It's like, oh, you know, relationships should be this way, or, you know, should be celebrated in this way. And then also the water energy makes them feel deeply as well. So this is like one of the most romantic signs. But then almost this mystical, because you should have this kind of connection to almost the sense of like sacrifice. You know, there's got to be more. The 12th house is the last house. It's like, what is there beyond? What is the mystical, you know, spiritual? I think, you know, we talked about some Neptune. Spirituality is a great word for that one as well, which I would bring into Pisces as well too. It's like, what do you believe spiritually that connects you to all of these things? And with that, with that 12th house energy, you may want to try to leave the world in a better place than you found it, or find the things I believe, you know, no child should be raised up in poverty. These are things you may truly believe, but then you may struggle to completely change the entire world in one lifetime all by yourself, and that can lead you to be very, you know, that's why I think some of the depression, you know, or lazy, I think it comes across as pretty harsh, almost like, how do you get started in enacting all this? It's like, oh, that seems like such a mountain to climb. If it's like, I spent my whole life trying to fight childhood poverty and it's not defeated, whatever the case might be for you, and this Pisces kind of energy was like, oh, that's such a huge mountain to climb and go through. How am I even going to get started, or hesitate to get started? That could come across to others as being more lazy versus the more ambitious signs. And it's not necessarily laziness and like, well, this is a bad sign, but it's more of almost like, how do I even get started with it when I really, instead of being ambitious and just start charging up the mountain, I really want to get connected with it on a spiritual, emotional water level and figure out what it is that I believe and how I'm going to get attached to it. You know, this is really like the secret of life kind of house, and you know, almost the sign of the zodiac from that one as well too. So I really, you know, obviously I'm a water sign, so I guess I do connect more with some of the water sign energies as well too. And this is the one that I really appreciate as well. And I absolutely, of the houses, the 12th house is one of my favorites. I spend a lot of my time really thinking about the 12th house energy as well. And then, you know, that's why I like some of that Neptune spirituality energy too, because I think that's what's led me down my path to, you know, astrology, numerology, and tarot, and even mindfulness, you know, that kind of psychic, mystical, intuition kind of thing. Like, why are we here? What do I believe? What are my belief systems? Where do they come from? Why am I not challenging belief systems that were just handed to me from people before? All this energy that I love from Pisces is super fabulous. So now I, you know, won't go, you know, super deep in this, and I'll post this image separately in this. There's also, so I think one thing, you can kind of really get to feel all those different energies, and as I said, play the translation game. If you get stuck with some of them, translate it into a planet, translate it into a house, whichever one's more helpful to you to kind of figure out and feel the energy that's coming, especially as we see how we put it together to actually start reading astrology charts and reports. But this is one, it's the compatibility chart by zodiac sign, where the women's female sign are on the top, and men's are the blue down the side are the men's. Women's are kind of the pinkish across the top. This is based on the research of Gunter Sachs, who has a great book out if you want to read it. He kind of analyzed data. I'll have to go back and look. I think it was from Switzerland, because Switzerland had very public records where you could look up marriage records and see the dates, the birth dates of people who got married. So you can kind of, this is kind of the data he figured out. It's like, okay, versus random on chance alone, how are there more marriages between what sign and less marriages between others? And that kind of gets an idea of compatibility. Now I want to caution people, because as I've used this chart before, and I've talked with people about compatibility broadly, they're like, oh, if my compatibility score is low or negative, that means we're doomed and we should not even date, and that shouldn't be the case. That's not what I'm saying at all. What ends up coming in compatibility, and as I do like astrology compatibility reports, you know, for relationship stuff, and some of those reports get into, is really gets into it's not compatibility of like, are you going to make it or should you be together? Because obviously opposites do attract. So seeing, valuing or seeing something in someone else that you don't see in yourself, it can lead to lots of attraction. but at the same time, it means you just don't see the world the same way. So, if you have, I'm a Scorpio, and actually I ended up marrying a Scorpio, so we both, I kind of see the world the same way, which kind of makes sense, or at least we understand things. But then I would say, in the same way, we can almost like hurt each other in the same way, where it's like, oh, you're making me feel this way. It's like, well, you're making me feel the exact same way in this other area too. So how do we kind of work through that kind of energy as well? But in this case, it kind of talks about you just, whether you see the world in a similar way or you don't. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't be together. It says you're going to need to spend more time communicating how you view the world and your viewpoint and the lens that you're viewing the world from if you have a lower compatibility score, because the other person's just not going to resonate with that viewpoint or that energy, because that's just very different from them. The examples I always kind of see in relationships and so forth is like, oh, we're in a big fight or we're arguing over something. To me, it's no big deal and we should just get over it. But I have no idea why this is a very big deal for them and they just can't get over it. And you go and talk to that person, they say, they're crazy. I have no idea why they don't view this as a big deal, because this cuts to my core, this goes to my certain values, wherever the case may be. And it's because from their view and their sign and the way they view things, they view the world very differently. And this tiny rift isn't just a small deal that they should just sweep under the rug and move on. To them, it's like a core value and stuff like that. It's like, how can you deny me this core value, or whatever the case may be? And that's where you get this incompatibility, where it's one person views the situation as no big deal, another person views the situation as this is a monstrous deal. And that's where communication is going to bridge the gap between the two, because you just don't naturally see the world in the exact same way or through the same lens. And that's totally okay and totally expected. But it just means if you have a lower compatibility score, you are less likely to see the world in the same way. So you're going to have to do a lot more work and a lot more communication to ensure that you don't have those kinds of misunderstandings or and so forth or anything like that.